and welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube Live. I'm Taylor Phillips along with Ed Smith. Let's get to it. The Lions beat the Jets 20-17 at MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey to improve to 7-7. It was a defensive slugfest, but Khalif Raymond opened the scoring with a 47-yard touchdown punt return. Zach Wilson started for the Jets at quarterback because Mike White was not medically cleared to even play. So Zach Wilson, that being said, had bad passing and reads at times during the game, but the Lions secondary kept allowing deep completed passes, one of them for a touchdown, and the other which led to that Greg Zuerlein 58-yard field goal attempt, which we'll get to later on. But it was a defensive slugfest. But fast forwarding to the last few minutes of the fourth quarter, Dan Campbell elected to try a 54-yard field goal attempt from Michael Badgley on fourth down when there was room to punt. Michael Badgley just kicked it short, and then the Jets drove down the field with excellent field position and capitalized with a C.J. Uzama 1-yard touchdown reception on a play fake from Zach Wilson. Smart play, but the Lions did not give up yet. The Lions reached midfield, came up this close to a first down, just inches short of it on third down. So they went for it on fourth and inches. They had to anyway. And Jared Goff found a wide open Brock Wright all alone in that vicinity, and he took it the distance. He had to turn it upfield, had to make a move inside the 20, and he beat everybody to the end zone for at least a go-ahead touchdown, which stood to be the game winner. Same possession, he dropped a pass earlier, but he redeemed himself there. And then Robert Saleh, when the Jets drove, he decided not to call a timeout after a sack until the 19-second mark before 4th and 18, when he threw a deep pass deep and around the 40 in Lions territory, setting up that missed 58-yard field goal attempt by Zuerlein. It was well wide left on the last play of the game as time expired. And one bright side of the secondary, may I point out, was Jerry Jacobs. He had a pass breakup, and then he made an interception catch, which looked to be a real can of corn in the outfield. So, Ed, another thrilling win for the Lions on the road. They head to Carolina, but analyze the Jets game.
Yeah, but before we get to Carolina and understand the implications that has for the Lions with their playoff hopes for the season, we definitely got to recap and go over what we saw here in New Jersey, as you said, not New York, despite it being called the New York Jets, but that's another topic for another day. Worth noting, this is the Lions' second trip to MetLife Stadium. Remember, they were here a few weeks back to face the Giants, and that was an absolutely dominant, destructive display by the Lions in their blowout victory against the Giants team that currently right now is occupier of one of those two playoff spots, remaining wildcard spots in the NFC. So it'll be quite telling to see how that game goes on to the final end of the season marks in terms of figuring out seeding and who actually gets in. But as it speaks to this game, like you said, Taylor, this was a defensive slugfest. Kind of think of it, I think we had both predicted last week that this was going to be more of a low-scoring affair. And come to think of it, this was kind of be an expected type of game when you consider that both these teams really do embody their head coaches. The Lions embody Dan Campbell's approach of being physical, being upfront, being in your face. That includes being physical both at the line of scrimmage, both the offensive side and defensive side of the ball. If you control the line of scrimmage, you control tempo, you control pace of the game, you control the scoring, everything. It all starts at the line, starts in the trenches. We've seen that being one of the Lions' biggest strengths It's always been one of, if not their biggest strength offensively. Now it's starting to become one of their biggest strengths defensively too. I'll get to that in a little bit in regards to both Hayden Hutchinson and James Houston. But back to the other side of the fence. I mentioned defensive battle. I mentioned both teams involving their head coach. Well, when you look at the Jets and you look at look at Robert Saleh, defense is his trademark. It has been stamped and rubber marked all over his coaching resume, whether it be in college, whether it be in grad, assistant, whether it be with the Niners, or even going way back when to Georgia. Even he has been involved for the most part in some type of capacity or involved defense. Could have been linebackers coach, assistant head coach, defensive coordinator, and now he is there as a head coach. Fun fact, by the way, since everyone knows of Robert Saleh being a native Michigander, born in Dearborn, I believe went to Northern Michigan as well. He was a tight ends coach for the Spartans for MSU in 2002, which is kind of coincidental and ironic when you consider Dan Campbell was when he played. Even back when it was in high school, he's always been a tight end. Tight ends coach is how he started, and now here he is as a head coach himself. So quite coincidental uh, factoid there. Now, in terms of why Robert Saleh is known as a defensive-minded coach, you're seeing it in the Jets' defense. It's been their bread and butter this whole season. A little bit of flashback to the days of Rex Ryan when in the early 2010s when the Jets were making trips to the AFC Championship game. But the Jets' defense this season, they've been ranked top 10, Taylor. They've been ranked top 10 in multiple scoring metrics. And I consider these to be very important and essential to how you win and lose football games. It's yards you give up, amount of points you give up, and what do you do in the red zone? How many times you give up points in the red zone, your red zone percentage. The Jets are top 10 in all those metrics defensively. And that, again, covers for a lot of things. It covers for the fact that their stud running back, Brees Hall, went out tore his ACL. It covers for the fact that they've had now multiple games this season, blunders and missed, have cost points, and in essence, it's cost them games even, thanks to special teams. We saw it again in this one with Khalif Raymond. I'll get to him in a second. And of course, bad, porous offensive play calling, or not play calling, but play making by their offense, primarily by their quarterback. Despite all that, this defense has been the reason why the Jets have had a good season that they've had so far and been fighting for a playoff spot themselves. It also helps when, just like the Lions, the Jets have themselves a Defensive Rookie of the Year candidate in Detroit native Sauce Gardner. Sauce came into this game tied with Aiden, believe it or not, with 2 interceptions, which is, you start to hear some of on the Hutchinson side of the debate saying, oh, this is why Hutch should be Defensive Player of the Year. While I get that, and don't get me wrong, I'm Team Hutch all the way, you got to understand why Gardner has been considered a front runner for the most part of the season. It's not just because of the New York market. It's not because he plays for a New York team. It's because of how effective and how good he has been in his specialty, which is what completely shutting down one side of the field, which is what you want your star cornerback to do. And he has done that in spades. So listen, don't get me wrong. I would love it if Hutchinson does get the award, especially if he keeps ramping up the production, getting better and better and better week in and week out, getting more sacks, more pressures, showcasing, other versatile parts of his game, like we saw with him getting interceptions or the fumble recovery against the Giants. The more that he shows that, the more he's going to press some people and get some looks and votes for Defensive Rookie of the Year. But I'm sure if you ask Aiden what he wants more, does he want a D-Roy award or does he want to get into the playoffs? I think what his answer was. But as for the game itself, besides it being a defensive, again, we got a first indication how defensive it was going to be when the Lions got stuffed on the goal line stand. And then right after that, the Jets go 3 and out. They have to punt, and that's what we saw. Khalif Raymond making that first big strike of the game, getting that punt return for a touchdown. Believe it or not, Taylor, it really reminded me last week. I believe it was Raymond. If not, it might have been someone else. If memory serves me, mistakes me. But Khalif Raymond also had a big punt return last week. Not last week, but the week before against Jacksonville. Because the play right after that led to the big bomb by Jared Goff to DJ Chark, and that really got the ball rolling offensively for the Lions. So really good to see Khalif Raymond still being useful, making impactful moments for the team, not just with his receiving, but also in special teams. And again, The Lions special teams unit coming up with big spots and big moments when you need it. Um, whether it been James Houston or Malcolm Rodriguez on coverage, making plays, making essential tackles down the field. Uh, trick play calls by Dan Campbell running fake punts. The steadying improvement of your field goal kicking by Badgley, which I think played into Dan Campbell's decision, which I'll get into later. And then, this important stat I think right here kind of explains why the Lions have been so good with special teams. They've had the second best punt return average yards in terms of, what your usual average punt return goes in terms of setting up field position, or as we saw with Khalid Raymond, the big touchdown. The Lions are ranked second in the league behind only Atlanta, behind only the Falcons. To me, I consider it to be a very impressive stat point when you talk about a key function of your game, which is your special teams. If you're flipping the field with good, solid punt return, or the good, solid punt return game in and game out, that sets you up your offense very nicely. And we saw that again. We saw that against Jacksonville, and again, we saw it score a touchdown here against the Jets. Now, I think it's fair to admit that while the Lions played very well defensively, it does help that they were facing Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson has had a very bad year this year. He's shown himself to be, unfortunately, a bust when you consider the fact that the Jets did select him with the number 2 overall pick just a couple of years ago.
And a bad year going in.
Yeah, bad year going in. It got so bad. Everyone remembers, the post conference after the bad game against the Patriots where they lost. Because yes, they gave a punt return touchdown in the last seconds of the game, but their defense had only given up 3 points. That was on offense. That was on their quarterback. Why they lost that game. And Zach Wilson, with his answer, his demeanor, and his attitude after that game, it gave Robert Saleh no other choice but to bench him. And then you saw how the Jets rallied behind Mike White afterwards, to the point where even though he got badly hurt and it was so injured to the point where doctors would not clear him, he still wanted to give it a go. And I think this game showed why, because when you look at the play of Zach Wilson, think about this. They didn't even go to Joe Flacco. Okay, they had to go to Zach Wilson instead of Joe Flacco, despite Mike White being so hurt. So I understand from a confidence standpoint and seeing what he's got, but man, he showed why Mike White has more than earned that starter role, and when he gets healthy enough, he'll be that starter again. If it wasn't the fact that he got bailed out by Garrett Wilson multiple times throughout this game, I don't think we will be saying anything. We will be saying way more negative things about Zach Wilson's performance. He looked very bad in the pocket. He just stood around like a statue for most of the game. Took bad sacks after bad sack at the inopportune moments. I remember that first sack he took against James Houston. He just stood there like a statue. And in terms of timely sacks, my goodness, that last drive right there, with a minute left or so, first play of the drive, he takes a sack. And he takes another one on that third down, which led to finally Robert Saleh using that timeout in the 4th and 18. Again, the reason why the Jets were in that spot where they had to kick a field goal, with 1 second left and it was on first down. Yes, it was partially due to the fact that Robert Saleh mismatched the clock, and we'll get to that in a second. But the play by their quarterback, and particularly on that last drive, put them in that spot. Credit to the Lions defense, and especially, Romeo Okwara. Welcome back. This was his first game back after tearing his Achilles last year. You see John Comiskey, who I think has been such an underrated pickup for this Lions defensive line. It's not even funny. And then, of course, the gem that was proven to be James Houston, the developing gem that is, now with another sack that I believe is his 4th sack or 5th sack. No, his 4th sack. In his 5th career game or something to that effect. Either way, he's had a sack in every game he's played this season. That's remarkable. And consider the fact this is a 6th-round rookie, and he's making this type of impact for your team, says everything. Credit and kudos to Brad Holmes on that. Now, to the Dan Campbell decision, I'm going to try to defend that decision from this standpoint. I think it goes in line similar to what, the feel of how you understand it, of trying to build confidence in your kicker, number one. That's first and foremost. Second of all, trying to get points that effectively ices the game. Those two, yeah, just those two main points. If there's a third one, I can't think of it at the moment, but those two points stand out to me as to why he would make this type of decision. And he's done it before multiple times. Coincidentally, he's done it against the Vikings, both at the end of the game in Minneapolis, which led to Minnesota coming back and winning. And then, of course, we saw it again last week. While granted they got that first down, they still needed to get some points to effectively end the game because if Badgley had missed that kick, it still would have been a one possession game with a few seconds left, and Minnesota would have had the ball in perfect field position. So it was very imperative for Badgley to hit that kick. He did. I think that played into Dan Campbell's decision making for this call right here. And I think if he is presented with a similar spot down the line, he will do it again. It's just in Dan Campbell's nature, just like with the fourth down calls. He's getting smarter with them. He's getting more convenient at timing with them. But when you present him with a chance, he's going to go for it, like we saw with that going for it on fourth down from the one, so early in the game. If I could do a comparison of that field goal decision, I would compare it to how Harbaugh was trying to ice the game with Jake Moody against Ohio State. Remember, this is before the two big runs by Donovan Edwards that put it away. This was still a close game, still one possession game. Harbaugh was trying to make it 34-23, but a couple bad play calls had put Jake Moody in a spot where he had to kick a very long, I think it was a 57, 58-yard kick, and he was just short. Look,
57.
57-yard kick, just short. Luckily,
Donovan a little wide left too.
Yeah, it went wide, but he had the leg for it, just didn't have the accuracy. And I think, again, if you had called a better play call to get him closer in that spot, it would have been a much better kick. But I understood Harbaugh's reasoning for that, just as I understood Dan Campbell's reasoning for this. Now, the Lions still had to overcome some things, like, for one, CJ, other than Garrett Wilson being a problem for them, CJ Uzuma was another big problem for them. It gave me flashbacks to how you remember the game in Chicago, Taylor, at Soldier Field. Remember how Cole Kemet was just going wild, scoring big touchdown at the big touchdown against the Lions defense. That's what happened here, and it came off. Both of Uzuma's touchdowns came off play action. When you look at it, the first one came off a play action where Wilson rolled to his left and he ended up throwing to his right. That fooled the defense, that fooled the secondary, and that got Uzuma wide open as can get, and then he just walked on in for the touchdown. As for the second touchdown, I could kind of see why they let that touchdown happen, and notice why I said let that happen. First of all, it came off play action again, so it's worth noting that both his touchdowns came off play action. Unfortunately, I could see it as something that other teams will use as a blueprint, try to use against the Lions more in the future. But anyway, back to Uzuma. When he got his second touchdown, though, I think the Lions were kind of glad that happened at that point because this was the 4-minute mark. They had already given up big chunk plays. They likely knew that, hey, guess what? If we let them score here, let's give our offense enough time to do what they can do. It's a close enough game. If they get a score, they'll probably use as much clock as possible to where we'll get one more chance to redeem ourselves. And that's exactly what happened. So I'm kind of fine with that touchdown happening on the goal line because that's what we saw in the ensuing drive. And think about this, Taylor. When that play happened at midfield with 2 minutes to go, fourth down. Remember, that was
10 inches.
That could have gone a myriad of ways, Taylor. That could have been a botched snap, a fumble, a stopped run up the middle, turnover on downs. That was a gigantic momentum shift, a pendulum shift of momentum either way on that play right then there. And here's what set it all up. First, you got to go back to last week to Minnesota. And frankly, not just last week, all year. They've been doing this jet sweep motion to death. They've gotten teams to the point where now they're expecting it now, and that's good. When you get the repetition of something going, it opens up your playbook to more wrinkles and more play action and more misdirection, as we saw in this play. Like we saw last week with Penei Sewell, how he got that game-sealing catch, how he ran in motion. We saw with Amon-Ra St. Brown, same way they've been using him all season. Use him as jet sweep. He's going to be your first option on this play, if not your first decoy. And I think that's exactly what happened because as you saw Amon-Ra go up, you saw all the Jets players, all their focus, all their attention of that defense go straight to the left. And what that did, especially with CJ Mosley, the linebacker, when he went to his left, combined with the effort and the patience of Brock Wright, getting the contact with that with that check block before springing out the backside. Good patience. By the way, I gotta say, Jared Goff has been phenomenal this past stretch of games with the Lions. He's had double-digit touchdowns thrown, over 1,000 yards through the air, one interception. He has been taking care of the ball completely. He has been making good decision after good decision, and he does not get enough. He does not get enough credit for how good he has been with this team's turnaround. If your quarterback is not playing good, you don't have a shot. Jared Goff's been playing good. They have a shot because of that. Now back to the game.
Very
itself.
good.
Yeah, absolutely. But back to the game itself. Back to that fourth down play. Good on Jared Goff, showing his patience, because it helps when you have an offensive line that's going to give you the protection. So the protection, and again, back to what I said, it starts at the trenches. So with the Lions, giving Goff that protection with the offensive line, he was able to make his reads, make his progressions, see his pay, and be patient. Most importantly, he saw St. Brown was covered, so guess what he did? Look to his left. What do you see? Big Brock Wright, wide open, backside screen, hand it to him, pitch and catch, and Wright with very deceptive speed, was able to march on down the field in a way that, honestly, the moment I saw it and every single time I watched that replay, I can think of only one instance of where the situation, the circumstances, the play itself, and how the game itself ultimately play out, it was easy. It was Eric All for Michigan against Penn State on that big 58-yard scamper of a touchdown that was a gigantic momentum turn, not just for Michigan in that game, because remember, that was after the Michigan State loss. That was before they went on their roll to beat Ohio State and win the Big Ten and get to the college football playoff. That was that momentum swing of a moment right then and there for Michigan. We could have very well seen that moment happen right there for the Lions with Brock Wright. Great execution, great setup. Ben Johnson is an absolute genius. He has been showing his worth to this team and his coaching staff all year long. I hope he stays for at least one more year. If he does end up as a head coach in the NFL next season, trust me, he'll well deserved it. Now, speaking of head coaches, now we got to talk about Robert Saleh. If people will be more than willing, trust me, if this was Dan Campbell had done this, oh my God. We would be dunking on him till kingdom come. But for Robert Saleh, not calling a timeout, not using any of its timeouts until his 19 seconds left. First of all, horrible lack of self-awareness, because once you saw that Garrett Wilson, he was making these spectacular catches, but guess what? He wasn't getting out of bounds. He was staying in bounds. Yes, he's making first downs, but the clock's still moving. Tick, 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 like Chris Berman would used to say. So when you see the clock ticking down and down, you're under a minute, you're under 40 seconds, 30 seconds. Why are you not using your timeouts? You can't take them with you. You can't take them with you in overtime. You can't take them with you at the end of the game. Why didn't you not take them right then and there? It was just baffling. I can't explain it. I don't know if Saleh himself can explain it. Another thing that didn't help, like I mentioned before, the Zach Wilson sacks. When you take a sack on the first play of the drive and another sack that puts you in the 4th and 18, that's going to put you in a bad spot. So even if, you somehow make a miracle play, which we saw ended up happening, you're still in a scramble because you've already wasted so much time to begin with. But that also falls on coaching. If Saleh had just taken a timeout, if he had just taken just one timeout with about, let's say, 50 seconds left, 40 seconds left, it would have given him time to scheme up what he had to do to get the ball downfield. And if Wilson got the ball downfield again, you had more time to prepare to see if you can get a couple more plays or two, get in better position, get a better field goal kick for your guy. But because you didn't do that, you saw what happened. You ended up being forced to kick a field goal, a 58-yard field goal on first down with 1 second left because you didn't know how to use your freaking timeouts. So, hey, the Jets, they bought that loss on themselves. And, with the zero line kick, It kind of reminded me. I don't know. I'm using a lot of parallels and analogies here, but I can't help it because I've seen the scenario happen so many times before in the past, year after year after year for the Lions, and it's gone the other way. Now we're on the opposite end of the spectrum. It's kind of gives you a different perspective of things. You know what I mean? So, but seeing this at the end of that game, seeing that missed field goal, seeing the team celebrate, and knowing how it was essential and vital to their playoff spot, their playoff hopes and chances, it was like the 2011 game against the Raiders. You know, they had the late clutch Stafford drive, the touchdown to Calvin, and then Dominican Sue of all people blocking the Sebastian Janikowski kick to end the game. It had elements of that as well. So all those factors came into play here. You know, and another guy worth mentioning, Jerry Jacobs, like you mentioned, Taylor, with the whole getting the interception. Jerry Jacobs has been an unsung hero, in my opinion, for this defense. Because while you've had Jeff Okuda having to deal with his struggles both on the field and off the field leading up to this season, he's gotten better, thankfully. He still had that doubt, still had that stigma. Excuse me. Melifonwu, who I think has been a fine draft pick for Brad Holmes, has not been consistent with his health, has not been able to stay on the field as much, so we have been able to see um, what what his potential could be. Thankfully, you like what you see out of Kirby Joseph. He's been proven to be an absolute star of a pick, and now
Yeah.
and
Two
guess
picks against the Packers.
yeah, and now what you see here with Trace, especially in the light of Tracy Walker. Remember, he got hurt early at the start of the season. He was gone. He would be gone for the rest of the season. So knowing that, someone else had to step up in his place, in his spot, and Jerry Jacobs, he became that man for that spot. And let's not forget, people, on Thanksgiving, he locked up Stephon Diggs. He had him in clamps all game long. And let's not forget, before that last drive, Jacobs got hurt. He had to leave the game. I firmly believe if Jerry Jacobs had been at that game, Stephon Diggs would not have gotten open on that last drive. Remember, Buffalo had to go through their entire bag and then some just to get out of Detroit with that win on Thanksgiving. If Jerry Jacobs is there for that last drive, someone tells me that game's going to overtime, and you have a damn good shot at winning. But that's neither here nor there. You're in the spot right now. You're in the hunt. You're at 7-7. You're at 500 in the month of December for the first time in, I believe, 5 years, since we're going back to Jim Caldwell days. Okay, that's an absolute credit to Dan Campbell, absolute credit to this coaching staff, these players, and absolute credit to Brad Holmes for making the picks that he made, because we're seeing it coming to fruition from what he did last year, what he did this year, and obviously what he's going to do next year, thanks to that Rams pick.
Yeah. And the Lions were 1-6, but now they're 7-7, 6-1 since the Aubrey Pleasant firing, and now they're tied with the Seattle Seahawks at 7-7 in the playoff hunt. How amazing is that?
It is. It's quite honestly. I know more than likely when you think of other guys and I think of other teams that have been performing this year, like Minnesota, like Philly, it wouldn't be surprised to see Sirianni or Kevin O'Connell win Coach of the Year. But I will be damned if I don't see a dark horse campaign being started for Dan Campbell. When you consider the fact that he's in his second year, he came off a 3-win season last year, 3-13-1, and he started this season 1-6. If he can somehow, with this team, find a way to win, dare I say, 9 of their last 10 and get into the playoffs, you better believe he has my vote for Coach of the Year, hands down. No disrespect to Philly, no disrespect to Minnesota. When you look at those circumstances and knowing the perception of Dan Campbell as it already is, as it pertains to him, his personality and his mentality and style and all that, if they pull this off, I'm voting him Coach of the Year. If I had a vote, he'd be my pick.
Yeah, he'd be my pick too, because he led this team from 1-6 to 7-7. Simple. He had help too from Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn.
Yeah, and guess what? He had to make the tough calls when it's necessary. He has spoken nothing but high praise about Aubrey Pleasant, both as a coach and as a person. But he knew and it was evident as we've seen since, it just wasn't the right fit with this team. So he had to make the tough choice, just like we saw last year with Anthony Lynn. Just was not the right fit with the team. Yeah, I'm talking about Dan Campbell when he had to fire Anthony Lynn last year, and of course when he had to fire Aubrey Pleasant.
Oh,
Yeah, this year, tough choice, but it was necessary. And you've seen how the team has improved since. We saw it last year on the offense, and it's led up to now, and now we're seeing it this year on the defense, and it's starting to lead into something bigger and better. I think will be for next year, provided that they address that in the draft, whether it be with their own pick and especially with that Rams pick.
yeah. So the Lions take on the 5-9 Carolina Panthers, who are coming off a loss. Christmas Eve, Saturday at 1 on Fox. Ed, analyze the game, please.
All right. Well, I can say for a fact that this is a game worth mentioning of the fact that, yeah, both teams need this for their playoff lives. It's essentially a if you lose, you're out sort of thing. Um, for Carolina, they are essentially eliminated if they do lose this game. They probably got to win out and get some help. For the Lions, they are in the driver's seat. This is a win and you're in scenario. Well, almost a win and you're in scenario because again, Seattle and Washington and the Giants, they're all ahead of you, and they have two of those spots ahead of you as well. Now, good thing for the Lions is Seattle and both the
Wait,
Washington.
Seattle's 7-7, isn't it?
Yeah, they're 7-7 as well. But remember, they got the tiebreak on us since they beat us at the head.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that
Gotcha. Yeah,
48,
that's
yeah,
true.
that 48-45 game. Remember that. But that being said, though, their schedule does not look good for the remainder of the year. Same thing for Washington. It's very conceivable to see both those teams lose at least two more times, or at least once, if not two of their last three games here. Meaning, if you're the Lions, you can take care of business, win all your games, you're in the playoffs comfortably. Now, what in terms of what the Panthers, what can they offer for you? What to look out? What's their strengths? What's their weaknesses? Frankly, this is a mid NFL. This is a mid-level football team that's had problems at the quarterback spot all year. They had to trade Christian McCaffrey. They're bottom of the league in terms of offense. They're mid. They're average on defense, but they're when you have a putrid offense like that, and Sam Darnold again has been largely inefficient and ineffective as well for you as a quarterback. I could see this as playing out similar, probably and more line to the games that we saw against Jacksonville and against the Giants, to where they'll get some points, they'll get a turnover or two, they'll make some plays as long as the offense doesn't get it, doesn't make mistakes and get their own way. I can see the Lions jumping out to a lead, or it stays tight throughout the first quarter, and then they make plays and break away later on. So either way, I'm predicting the Lions win. I don't have the spread in front of me, but I believe Detroit should be favored. If not, I don't know, like at least 3 or 4 points. Do you have it in front of you, Taylor? I'm just curious.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Well, Saturday. Hang on a minute. The Lions and Panthers. There is no spread, to be
No
honest.
spread.
Wow. What? Well,
Huh.
I don't think. Oh, wait. 2.5-point favorites. The Lions.
Ooh, 2.5. They're expecting a close one. Okay. Because see,
I think the Lions cover. I think the
I think
Lions
so
cover.
too. I think so too because I just don't think Sam Darnold. Like I said, if you take away the running game for Detroit, you're going to have to force Sam Darnold to beat you. And hey, if he goes Matt Flynn on you, God bless him. He had a career day. It was his day. But I just don't see that happening. This defense is much improved. This pass rush is there. They have depth. They have what it takes to get after the quarterback in timely fashion and at timely moments. I just see, the Lions being able to make enough stops, make enough plays, and they'll win this one quite comfortably. I see and again, when you have a high potent offense as Detroit has been doing, remember, the only reason they didn't score, they got to 20 points still, and that was against one of the best defenses in the league this year by far. So it's a step down in quality of defensive style of football that they're facing this week. I expect them to score more points, at least 10 more points. I see this being a final score of 31-17 Detroit.
All right. I'm going to go 35 to. I'm going to go 35-18.
Mm-hmm.
Lions.
Just like the Giants.
All right.
Just like the Giants game.
Yep, that's true. So the Pistons signed their general manager Troy Weaver to a contract extension, according to Shams Charania. we both agree with this move because he needs more time, and there'll come a time when he will give Dwayne Casey professionally his pink slip.
Yeah, I mean,
'Cause-
when you consider the fact that the draft choices and the draft selections that Troy Weaver has made in the past couple of years, getting Cade Cunningham, getting Jaden Ivey, getting Jalen Duran as well. Yes, you'd like to see Sadiq Bey. He's had a big fall from grace this year, which is sad to see. But at least I can say
don't forget Killian Hayes.
I was gonna say Killian. He's gotten much better in the past few games. He was, I
Yeah.
think, he was on that that potential radar that straddling that line of what we're going to do with this guy, and he may still be on the line, but he's in a much better spot now as compared to what he was a couple of weeks ago. It's gonna happen when you're forced to take up the mantle when your star point guard goes out for the year. But certain fact that what Troy Weaver has struck on the past couple of seasons, the fact that he was able to get Bogdanovich for that deal, and I think he could use him as a crucial swing piece for a trade come the deadline. It's always a possibility. And also knowing what's up and coming in future drafts, especially 2023. Yeah, I have faith that Troy Weaver is going to get the job done, and more likely than not, it's probably going to be able and be allowed to select his own head coach this time.
Mm-hmm. All right, so yeah, that's it. So we covered the Lions and we covered the Pistons. So that's another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth podcast on wherever people are watching this. Follow the Michigan Sports Truth podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Michigan_Truth. Like its Facebook page, subscribe to its YouTube channel at the Michigan Sports Truth podcast, and listen in audio form on Spreaker. Business shoutouts go to Cali Tickets. Call 877-225-8425 or visit CaliTickets.com. Creative Embroidery of Cadillac for designing the Michigan Sports Truth podcast logo on my clothing, and United Food Service Solutions of Grand Ledge, Michigan. The Michigan Sports Truth podcast is a presentation and production of Phillips Media. TTFN, ta-ta for now. Power to the people, hit them with a hind. Merry Christmas and be safe out there.
Merry Christmas, everybody, and go Lions.
And go blue.